It's Bronze and Modern Gods. I am John.
I'm Richard.
I haven't done our typical intro for a while, so I thought I'd do it. Hi, everybody. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods. Facebook, Instagram, socials, YouTube, algorithm, like, subscribe, bleep, blop, bloop. We've got showing.
What? Speaking of subscribers, we hit a milestone this past week.
Oh, we did. Yeah, we hit 6,000 subscribers this week, and I'm just kind of stunned. I say this every time we hit a milestone. I remember how excited we were when we hit 100.
I do too.
That first 100 was rough, man. Getting there was some hard going. But thank you, everybody, for following us on this crazy journey, and we're glad you're still here. And if you just joined us, you're one of those new people that helped us get to 6,000. Welcome and thank you all.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you please leave a comment. We love to interact with the people who listen to us. So if you leave a comment, you may be featured in the next section that we're going to do, which is John.
Viewer mail, but that's not yet.
Oh, that's right. We're doing okay. Never mind. I thought I was being sneaky there into a segue.
I appreciate the segue, but first we got to tease the show.
Okay.
We haven't been doing this for 4 years at this point. Underrated books of the week, viewer mail, of course. We've got some show and tell, but first, our hot book of the week. This is not a rerun. This is a new episode. This is The Department of Truth, #1. What? Richard?
Yeah, this book was on fire. It died out, but just this past week, James Tynion announced that the production of the TV adaptation has resumed now that the writer's strike has ended. Thank goodness.
And if you're unfamiliar with this book, the concept's basically, what if every conspiracy theory that's out there was actually true, and there was a Department of Truth that caused the theories, or I'm having trouble describing it. Basically, this would make a very cool series, sort of like an updated version of the X-Files.
Mm-hmm. The raw copies for this book are selling between $12 and $18. There are a number of print runs for #1. I think the last one is the 8th.
There's 6 printings.
There's 6 print runs? Okay.
I believe 6, yeah.
I thought it was more than that. I thought
probably there's
anyway, there are a lot of #1s for this book. CGC 9/8 go for around $45 to $50.
Yeah, this is really cheap compared to what was happening with this book around 2021. When I think 9/8 was like $125 slab at that point, right?
Yeah.
And you've also got the Lee Harvey Oswald variant. You've got the cover B variant. You've got the 1 in 100 something is killing the children inspired variant. I mean, geez.
Yeah, there are a variety of different covers. My favorite cover for this series is issue #2, the 1 in 25 variant, the baby eating cover,
the QAnon cover.
Yeah, it's just so creepy. It's just so creepy. I had to get a 9/8 of that. It's sitting in my collection. But
remember when I sold my 9.8 of that for like $450 at the height of the comic boom of 2021?
Yeah, I still have some raws of #2 and some of the other early books in this series. It's a really interesting series. The art style is very unique. If you like impressionistic Sienkiewicz style covers,
very, very Sienkiewicz-y.
This series will definitely keep you interested.
And if you have slept on this and you're a little into the speculation game, good time to buy in. It's cheap now still compared to where it was, and who knows what's going to happen when if that TV show launches. Lots of X-Men talk this week too, Richard. You saw that announcement. There was an article in, I believe, Deadline saying that Marvel was actively pursuing writers' pitches for X-Men now, X-Men movie, now that the strike is over.
They should have been in that process 2 years ago, in my opinion.
You would think. Crazy. Well, once we're running things, Richard, it'll all change. Speaking of running things, when can we take over CGC? Do we want to take over CGC?
That's the bigger question. Do we really want that headache?
Why are we talking about this? Well, we dropped off, both Richard and I dropped off a bunch of books at Baltimore Comic Con to the CGC booth, and I got every single one of mine back this week. I had a vintage submission, a high value submission, and a modern submission, and none of them were fast track, and they were all back this week. So the whole process took about 3 weeks, which is really speedy. I mean, kudos for that. Non-kudos for my submission grades, because remember a few months ago when we were submitting things, and we were not alone. There was a thread in the CGC forums about this as well. Multiple books were being returned with light finger bends.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here we go again. A good third of my submissions for vintage had light finger bends, and a new one, fingerprints. I've never gotten that note before in my life. We know that those fingerprints did not come from me, because if you watch the Comic Pressing 101 video, not only do I clean the books, I wear cotton gloves.
Mm-hmm. I've seen fingerprints before. I had
a grader note.
Yeah, I got a grader note. I had an ASM 129, and it's fingerprints. And sure enough, if you look at the cover, there is a fingerprint embedded on the cover. That's in a way it's non-removable.
But I mean, is it like the ink has been lifted off the fingerprint?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's not what this is. This is somebody was holding the book and the gloss. Ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I know how meticulous you are with books, and I just don't see that being something that you would do.
Not only that, who's the last person to touch the book to flip through and check all the pages? Mm. Of course, they're going to leave fingerprints. They're not wearing gloves. In fact, they brag about how they don't wear gloves because they want the tactile experience when they're grading a book. So I'm done. I'm not. Oh, it gets even better. Let me show you one of the books I submitted. You guys will remember this from a few weeks ago when we went through the books we were going to submit. My Captain Atom 83. It was an 8.0, maybe an 8.5. Now it's a 5.5 white pager because they detached the bottom staple for me, which was really nice of them. I didn't ask them to do that. I think that was probably a value add that they provided as part of the service.
It wasn't a line item on your invoice.
No. This was a book I pressed myself and cleaned myself. I checked myself. Check yourself. And that staple was not detached. Sorry. This is now 2 keys I have sent in. My Captain America 117 First Falcon, and now this First Blue Beetle, that have come back with a detached staple. Just like I said last time we were having these issues with CGC, I'm done for a few months. They obviously have new graders that are super zealous to prove themselves. And, let's have some consistency, guys. I try to have I had an honest conversation with myself. Maybe I missed something. Maybe no. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I solved that problem by just submitting books that have detached covers.
Oh, look at you.
When the world gives you lemons.
Over you.
I got my Zoot 11.
Wow, that came back at
2.25. I thought it was going to be a 1.5, maybe 1.8, because it is detached covers. It's got rusted staples, and they're all listed in the show in the grader's notes. But I cleaned it. No fingerprints. I did clean this book front and back before I sent it in. The back is kind of stained. You can see
I'm sure it is
not a beautiful book, but you can't find this book. It is a really tough book. Again, Ariel, thank you so much for pointing me to this particular copy. And 2.5 is the higher than I expected to get. So I am thrilled with this book, with being detached covers and all that wonderful stuff.
What is the pages?
It is. That's another thing. It says off-white pages.
Oh wow!
Which I'm impressed with too, because I thought I was going to come back potentially with brittle.
I thought we're going to be light tan. I saw that.
Yeah, book. The book is worn.
Do you think it's a gift grade? Do you think, honestly?
Maybe they said, "Oh man, we're going to give John some crap, so we got to balance out the universe." And
We're going to really stick it to this used guy. Let's give his co-host a gift grade. Well, all right. It's not all doom and gloom, although it mostly was, because this came back. I thought it was going to be this. I thought it was going to be leaning a little more towards 9.4. So I'm super happy. My Giant Size Invaders, #1, 9.6, off-white to white pages.
nice. Oh wow, that is beautiful.
Yeah. And this is a tough book. It's a square bound. And it's got, I think 9.6 is fair. I thought it was going to be more of a 9.4. I thought this little bindery tear here, I didn't know if they were going to treat that as a production error or if they were going to treat it.
Did they mark it on the notes? Oh, they didn't give notes.
They did give notes on this one.
They did. Wow.
It does mention that bindery tear. So, I imagine without that, they might have given this an outside shot at a 9.8, but I'm super happy with a 9.6. I've never had a 9.6 of this before. That and Champions #1, I went 9.8 of. What do you have?
Next, they're still in their original CGC bags here.
Oh, those high quality, non-cloudy,
yes,
acid-free bags.
This is a book that you pointed me to. This is Alter Ego #7. It's the first appearance of Black Adam in the Silver Age. Came back at 3.5. The cover is pretty beat, and you can see the spine. There's lots of stuff there on the spine. There's tape pulls on it. There's you see the corner gone in the cover, and the back has spots on it. It's definitely not a high grade book. I thought 3.5 was a pretty decent grade for it. I would agree with that. This is another book that I used the talcum powder bag to clean the cover of before I sent in. So I pressed it. So 3.5 white pages, which is great. I thought that was a good grade for this book.
That's a very good grade. I have a group of books here, 3 books that I remember I mentioned last week. If you guys were listening last week by chance, I came across a couple of boxes I had forgotten about, much like you were telling me earlier, Richard, that you discovered a box that you forgot about. Isn't it the best? I kind of like that. And there were, from a trip to Mexico City a couple years ago, there were some Mexican La Prensas, the company Marvel licensed to in the 60s and 70s. Héroes del Oeste, Heroes of the West. This is a Two Gun Kid reprint from the very early 70s with a Herb Trimpe cover, repurposed. And then there's another issue of Héroes del Oeste with Outlaw Kid, who you remember from last week's show, in the tradition of a Western Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then one last La Prensa from the, I believe this is 69. Yeah, 1969. It's an issue of Pepito with Lolita del Modelo. Millie the model. In Mexico, she's Lolita del Modelo.
Okay, awesome.
De Modelo, sorry, not del. De Modelo.
Now, question: Are those black and white? When you actually read them?
No, they are full.
They are full color.
Full color. Translated into Spanish. They kicked butt. They were, they were doing a really good job. And I don't know why La Prensa lost the license somewhere in the mid 70s, but they did. I think maybe they went out of business, or somebody out there has got to write a book about all these foreign variants. Why don't you get on?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, you have an unfair advantage actually having a husband who grew up in Mexico. So
it so happens to speak the language.
My last one is another. I said in 3 vintage books, and like John, they came back really quickly. This is Archie number 55, which is one of the innuendo covers. It's Archie and Betty or Veronica on the couch, and Veronica's father says, "Has Archie gotten there yet?" And he's about to kiss her and says, "Not quite, Daddy."
Cool.
So cool cover. All these early Archie innuendo books are have significant value. Number 50, which is the perennial headlights cover, is probably the highest one,
With
and I'll
our
get that.
size targeted right.
Yes. That's on my want list. But I'm going to collect all of them. This is a 3.0. This is a Off-White Pages book, and it had some flaws. It was not perfect at all, but I'll take a 3.0 grade. It's one of those books where I want the book, not the grade. I'm not chasing a particular grade. So, for what I paid for it, a 3.0 is a good price.
You didn't get any notes saying light finger bends to cover,
I
or
didn't. None of my books had light finger bends in it.
Guys, tell us in the comments, how is it going there? Did I get someone on a bad day? Let
I
me
don't
know.
know. Have you noticed I haven't submitted a lot of moderns recently? It's just
Yeah, none of mine were. I had one modern book that did come back a 9.8. It was that Uncle Scrooge Bombi Zombie cover. No problem. It was the vintage books that I
yeah.
just got hammered
Oh,
on.
my problem right now is just how expensive it is. The
Yeah.
new tiers have really, really driven the price. I submitted these 3 books, and I still have out as a magazine, of course, because they are slower. The TMNT #1, it's still waiting. Those 4 books cost me over $200, $250, I think, to submit, and that's just an unsustainable. I can't submit 50 books.
No.
I can't afford to do a pre-screen for fear that they'll all come back and be graded.
Yeah,
So
I think I'm taking a break for a while too, and yeah, the cost is a factor, but also just the frustration because
yeah,
I've submitted hundreds and hundreds of books over the last almost 20 years now. This thing has been a thing, and it's it goes through these cycles where it's just I will take a break every now and then where it's like, whoa, something's
mhm.
wrong here. There's a new crew. I don't know what's going on. So this is one of those breaks. It would not be show and tell if I didn't show off the Doll Man bondage cover of the week. It is Feature Comics number 72. On the cover, Doll Man is tied up while a cat is rubbing up against him. I joke that you have to tie Doll Man. Doll Man is so gay. You have to tie him up to get him near pussy.
Oh, I knew that was coming somehow.
I don't think that'll get us flagged. I hope
No,
not.
I don't think so.
But yeah, it's another adventure of Doll Man. How could you resist this cover if you saw it on the news stand? I bet you. Doll Man. There you go. I know everyone missed the Doll Man bondage cover of the week the last couple of weeks. We had people in the live chat during the premiere saying, "Where is my Doll Man bondage cover?"
Where is my innuendo?
People leave us comments all the time, and sometimes we reply to those comments. It's a segment called Viewer Mail.
You've got mail.
My first piece of viewer mail is from our email at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com from one Mr. Mike Fuller, who writes, "Hi, Richard and John. Love your YouTube show. Love you more. I'm of a similar age as you guys, and much of what you guys talk about brings up so many memories of my own comic book collecting journey. I don't normally add comments or put myself out there on social media. Well, too bad, Mike. You're out there now. But because of something I learned from your show, I felt I had to reach out. I was at the Cincinnati Con Expo this past weekend and came across a copy of Avengers #2 from 1963. Having seen the episode covering UK variants, I realized what I was looking at. If I hadn't seen that episode, I probably would have put it back thinking it was some kind of fake copy. Thanks to both of you, I am now the happy owner of that copy of Avengers #2.
It's great.
Keep up the great content. Signed, Mike." Mike, congratulations. That is really cool. Very early Marvel Pence copy. That is really an achievement. I hope it's a nice one. Avengers #2 is one of my favorite comics because of all the wrong reasons. It's one of those issues that looks like Jack Kirby drew in like 3 days. The Hulk has 3 toes on the splash page. Yeah, you just flip through that book and you just see it is a Jack Kirby rush job for sure. And to have a Pence copy is really cool, Mike. And talking about sharing memories. You're in Ohio there in Cincinnati. I don't know if you grew up there, but shout out to Dairy Mart and Lawson's.
Yeah, congrats on the book. That's awesome. I also am trying to expand my foreign comic collection. Um, I've got a book on the way from Australia that, yeah. So I'm really excited about having that show up. So,
Would
yep.
that be fair dinkum?
Shh.
That's Australian slang, right?
uh,
Sorry to our Aussie listeners. Oi, oi, oi. What is your next piece of your mail, or your first piece?
my first piece, it's Breakology. Says webtoons equals demise of traditional comics. No, you know, I saw this particular comment, and I thought I'd comment that I think the way that people consume comics is going to change in the future, and I think web comics are going to be more applicable and more reachable to a certain audience. You know, the younger people. My kids don't care about physical comic books. They just don't. They don't care about a whole lot of physical stuff anyway. Their whole life revolves around digital content, either games or movies.
This thing.
Hmm?
This thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is their life, and they are much more.
By the way, I was holding an iPhone to our podcast listeners.
This thing. They're much more likely to read something on the web than they are to go out and physically buy a copy of a comic and read that. So I see it as a future for the industry. Now, does that mean traditional comics will disappear? I don't think so. I think in traditional comics, there's they still make vinyl records, for example. There's still a market for physical media, and people will continue to buy comics. I just see this being an avenue for people who would never read a physical comic. And it gives companies an avenue to reach out to them, and it also gives a zero effort platform for new creators to make their own properties without having to worry about publishers and marketing and things like that. It's a direct to their audience medium, so I think it's going to be a good thing.
Two things on this. Number one, you covered a webtoon last week. Soldier.
Yeah, skeleton soldier didn't save the dungeon.
The link you provided was dead, and we had
no.
we had people in the comments saying, "Hey, could you post the link in the description like you said you were going to, John?" So I will post that link in last week's episode for the people that missed it.
I am sorry. I had posted a link, and I thought it worked.
It died. I think, well, it was some sort of pirated site. So,
there are a lot of different sites out there that publish that particular comic. Some of them are pretty ad heavy, and I tried to find one that wasn't going to pop up a million things. But yeah, definitely read it. I think it's a good read, and it will point you to other manga related comics that are out there on the web.
And the second thing I wanted to say to this, you beat me to it, Bri. Music, and you guys have heard me talk about this all the time. There's so many parallels between the music industry and comic books, and the advent of streaming and digital. Physical's dead, the CD's dead, vinyl's dead. Well, where are we now? Guess what? Not only is the vinyl fad really just hanging on there still, CDs are back, believe it or not.
Wow.
Even worse in terms of sound quality, cassettes are back. There is a huge cassette collecting community out there right now, especially sealed cassettes, like Metallica's Black Album, things like that go for big dollars. There is a company slabbing vinyl and cassettes now, much like they do for VHS and games. So there's always going to be an audience for physical. Marvel and DC in the comic realm are about this much of the market. Honestly, if we're going to be real frank, manga is about this much of the market, guys.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. We don't like to talk about it. We don't like to hear it because we love what we love when we grew up, and these gosh darn kids with their hula hoops and rock and roll music, they're ruining everything.
No, it's because I think manga writers are more prolific. They don't have as many barriers between them and their audience, and it's going to continue. Oh, speaking of manga, there's a new. Sorry for the segue. Scott Pilgrim animated series is coming out. I'm a huge Scott Pilgrim fan, so if you guys like the movie Scott Pilgrim Saves the World, which is one of my all-time favorite top 10 movies, the animated, it's based on a manga. Which is why I bring it up, and that they're making an animated show for that manga coming out in November. So keep an eye out for that.
Scott Pilgrim, aka George Michael Bluth. My next piece of viewer mail comes from a longtime friend of the show, Julius Maloney, and it is another reply in reference to our interview with Darren from the Fantastic Collection, the interview that has lived on. Julius writes, "Thanks for the suggestion that we come back and watch this interview. I'll be honest, when I initially came across this news story, and you can imagine as a comics collector my own personal bias, I was completely on the side of the dad, and that it appeared to be an ungrateful family who was now simply cashing in on a collection that they refused to acknowledge or respect. Now, hearing this and understanding better the impact on the family, I have nothing but respect for how Darren has been able to navigate both his own feelings for both his dad and the collection, as much as his being able to embrace the opportunity and share it with others as well as grow the collection. Also, a reminder to myself not to judge a comic book by its cover." All right, Julius. Good. I'm glad we were able to help shed some more light on this. And how's your estate planning going, everyone?
Yeah, that story again really humanizes people who formed those collections, those pedigrees. It's a lot of the times there's a lot of money involved, but there's also a lot of emotion tied up to it. No one collects a huge amount of comic books without having some kind of stories behind it and ties to it. So Darren is he's a great guy, and I wish him nothing but success with his collection and his journey that he's taking with it.
Awesome. What is your next piece of viewer mail?
My next piece is from YouTube commenter Cliff Woodbury 5319. On Cerebus, we talked about Cerebus. It is sad that a creator who created over 300 issues of a comic has a property that doesn't garner respectable prices for collectibles within the industry. And we talk about Dave Sim a lot, and who is the creator of Cerebus the Aardvark, which to me, at least the early issues were, just as important as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Love and Rockets. It was a black and white indie book that I loved to read. It came out on a monthly basis. Aardvark Vanaheim is the publisher, which was Dave Sim's publishing company.
And it was a great. His then wife, Denny Lobert.
Yes. I did great work. The art style originally was pretty rough, but he matured over time and developed his own voice. Hired Gerhard, who was another artist who did the backgrounds for him, and the two of them then did the rest of the series. He promised to do up to 300 issues, which he did. He got to issue number 300, and at the end of the 300, Cerebus died. So that's it for the series, and it's a great series. It starts off excellent. It's a very rough and tumble barbarian story at the beginning, and then it morphs over time. And I think it's a story of Dave Sim's journey, I think, because it starts off with, very rough and unpolished, and then it matures, and the art style gets cleaner and cleaner and neater to the point where you don't, it's all in black and white too. Every line is very sharp and clean, and the backgrounds are highly detailed. But as it gets more and more detailed, the story itself starts to morph, and it becomes this anti-matriarchal. It's tough to define the actual, um, uh, things behind the story, but it starts to degrade, and he starts to go into these rants, and
it's Fruity Loops, Cocoa Puffs.
The word screed comes to mind. It stops being an enjoyable comic to read. It just does. It becomes a slog when instead of word bubbles, you've got pages of text where he goes on and on about things. and I think he lost his audience in that process, which is really sad because the first 100 or so issues of this 300 book um, series were excellent. They were great. It was an interesting read. It was, as a part of my childhood, I enjoyed it. And if he had stopped at that one, issue 100, it was Mothers and Daughters, or it's some he has different story arcs throughout the whole thing that he
I believe it was Women Bad. What's the name of the
If he had stopped there, it would have been excellent. I think it would have been as memorable as Love and Rockets and Concrete and a lot of the other black and white indie titles. Um, but instead, he kind of bled away his own legacy, and it's a basically untouchable series. Of course, number one always is going to have a value. Probably the first two or three have some value as well. But after that, I was offered a run for 50 cents a book. They just don't hold value, and I don't. Given some of the other books that he wrote after the series ended, he's written some really, really just out there. It's hard to describe. I could not even describe the covers of these books, let alone the content. I don't see there being a trend changing, and it's really sad because, like I said, these are really great. It's a great story. He had some really nice humor, very very dark humor. One of his major characters is a Groucho Marx type of wit, and I think that carries through a lot of his stories. And to see all that just go to waste because the way that he ended the series and the way that he's moving, acting now, it's sad. Again, I don't see there being any change in the value anytime soon. So you either have a great opportunity to buy a landmark series from the 80s, or it's just going to continue to languish. What do you think, John?
First of all, Glamour Puss, anyone? The other series that's kind of very analogous to this is Savage Dragon, Eric Larson's Savage
Mm-hmm.
Dragon. He's going on 300 issues. He's not going to stop anytime soon. I still buy it out of habit. But it went from being, a slam bam Kirby inspired superhero imagey title, thin on plot, big on widescreen violence, to being almost like a hardcore porn book in some points in terms of the sex. Yeah, it turned a lot of people off in, like, I think the early 200s. But he's really course corrected, I think. He's steered that ship back to where it needs to be. So now it's kind of back to being the Savage Dragon we all knew and loved. But I think he lost so many people that people still think, oh, what happened to Eric Larson? Whatever happened to Eric Larson? He needs to go do a project somewhere and get his profile back up. But, I'm not getting paid to consult Eric Larson. Eric, if you're out there, you can email me for my fee. But I just see a lot of
parallels. Yeah, I agree totally. It's amazing how people who have great legacies can do things to sabotage those legacies.
I don't know, is it sabotage though, or do they get bored? I've been doing this one thing every month or so. I need to make some sort of statement. I need to shake it up a bit. I need to do something different. I get it. Working with a lot of artists in my life, the stagnation is death.
This thing, 12 issues a year, it takes a lot of years to get to 300. So I could see that.
You're a shark, you got to move to breathe. You got to keep changing, and sometimes those changes are not the best, and you kind of have to go, oh wait, people want to hear the hits. They don't like my difficult fourth album where I did a double album concept,
or the jazz acoustic album.
Did you see the Onion article this week about Bjork? The headline, it's Onion, so it's a farcical article, but Bjork sells her catalog to a magical elf in the forest in exchange for a diamond egg or something. I thought I was going to cry. I laughed so hard at that.
I love Bjork. She travels her own road.
Yeah. Another artist that, people want go back to the hits, Bjork, stop this.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hey, enough music. The next email is from Fred Bruno, who wrote to us at bronzemonarchgods@gmail.com. Hi, Richard and John. My favorite show on YouTube. Aw.
Oh, thank you.
Like a comfy leather chair in front of the fireplace on a winter's night.
Oh, well, that's nice. I appreciate that.
Does Dollman know about that leather? I would like to hear your thoughts on the following. Many of my fellow collectors in my group are jumping feet first into the Golden Age pre-code horror and crime, selling off their Silver Age grails. As you know, prices for these books are booming. There seems to be a quest for rarity, and many have realized the Silver and Bronze Age superhero books are fairly common. I have gotten Golden Age snobbed from my former comrades more than once as they scoff at my common superhero books. I have held back. My fear is that this pre-code market is boom phase 2. My concerns are it's the trendy thing to do right now, and it's still fairly niche. At these prices, will I be left holding the bag if I jump in? Is it just a hipster niche? Have we learned nothing from the boom? Or is this the way? What say you? Three Rivers Comics, aka Fred. P.S. Richard, for you, Pittsburgh Comic Show number 4, November 5th, keeps growing. Artist to be announced. Pittsburgh Comic Show. Free plug there for you. Fred, who cares? What do you like? What do you like to collect? Do you like superhero books from the Bronze and Silver Age?
Yeah.
Great. Are you looking for an investment that has a return rate double digits over 5 to 10 years? Oh, well, some of that Silver and Bronze stuff, I would argue X-Men #1 is probably one of the best investments you could have even now in this market. I still think that has room to grow as opposed to an Amazing Fantasy 15. Call me blasphemous, but that's my statement. I'm sticking to it. However, if your friends and you are bored with the easy wins, then absolutely Golden Age crime and women and horror are the way to go. That's what Richard and I, we're bored. It's easy to get, exactly. See, Zoot, what was that? Zoot 12?
This is Zoot 11 from 1947.
3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we first started this show, would you ever have wanted that book?
No.
No, was it even on your radar whatsoever?
Superhero locked. That's where I was. Yeah.
Exactly. Things change. And so, Fred, who cares what everybody else is doing? Look in the mirror. Who's buying for who here? You're buying for you. And if it's exciting to you, go for it. If you are making an investment, they're great investments. The true fact is your snobby friends are right. There are probably 500 copies of X-Men #1 compared to one copy of Crimes by Women #4 out there in circulation. So, it is what it is, but don't let anybody make you feel bad for what you collect. It's your stuff. If you like Todd McFarlane and you want to buy every copy of Spawn #1 that was made internationally, and so you can have the best Spawn #1 worldwide collection, who cares what I think? What do you think?
Totally agree. It's ultimately the collection is yours. Shape it the way that you like. If you find that, like John says, you're bored because you've gotten all the books that you want, right now is a great time to buy books. And so if you're looking to fill your collection, now is a great time. And if you reach that point, there's two options. There's going to Golden Age. Golden Age is an expensive route, but even more expensive are the pulps. The pulps are also something else that are starting to take off. And, some of the price in those books also date back from the 30s. So, but yeah, Golden Age definitely is, I think, a growth market. People are finding that there are only 5 copies of a particular book known in circulation, or 50 copies. That rarity is something you just won't find in Silver Age, Bronze Age books. If you're looking to chase that level of rarity, you're going to have to go to Golden Age. But don't do it just because everybody else is doing it. Just like John says, do it because you find something that you're interested in. I found certain books in Golden Age, like the Zoo covers. I like Jack Gaiman and Matt Baker and those kinds of artists. I appreciate their style, so I'm looking at buying those kinds of books. And Archie's, I've always been interested in Archie's, and as the more you get into that culture, the more you're interested in the earlier books, and so that's where I'm chasing those books as well.
Financially, crime and horror never dip.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or if they do, it's not an extreme dip like you were seeing with some Silver Age stuff. So it's always a good buy. The only time I would make someone feel ashamed of what they collect or be a snob is if they collect something like Cherry Poptart. So what's your next piece of viewer mail, Richard?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, John. My next piece of viewer mail comes from Prince of Cheese. Hey, Richard, have you heard of Cherry Deluxe?
Whoops, sorry.
It's a single issue of Cherry that was written by Neil Gaiman. I did not know that for some reason. I found one in a $1 box on Free Comic Book Day, and it just came back in 9.8. You are awesome because you have one of the few books on the census for that book. And as a matter of fact, that book came out 25 years ago. You know what that means, John?
It's the 25-year-old. That is what we call a pre-planned segue.
Great artist steal, right? Thank you so much, Prince of Cheese, for the great lead-in. Cherry Pop-Tarts. I read this book. Came out in 1998. There's a couple stories in it. One by Neil Gaiman, and the other one by Kate Murray. Neil Gaiman's story is about a beautiful angel and a beautiful devil, and they're tempting a man. They're both women, female, and they're tempting a man, and it gets pretty hot and heavy. Larry Welts does the art for both stories. I looked at the indicia. I was trying to find some reason why Neil Gaiman and Larry Welts, who is the Cherry Pop-Tart guy, got together and made an issue of focusing on Cherry. I find it fascinating. It's all in lovely black and white. It's a nice book. The census, though, there are only about 30 books on the census, and it's almost split 50-50 between regular universal grade books and signature series books. So a lot of people got Larry and Neil Gaiman to sign this book, and I totally would get Neil to sign it. If I came across a copy of this book in a dollar bin, I would pay for Neil Gaiman to sign it, just to hear the story, just to go up to him and talk to him, to hear the story behind this book. GPA, there's like I said, there are only so many books on the census, so there aren't very many sales. A 9.8 for Neil Gaiman signed book went for $313 versus a 9.8 for a Larry Welts book signed by his signature, which only went for $85.
Larry.
Larry is a pretty easygoing guy from what I've been able to get. So this is a pretty cool book. If you like Cherry Pop-Tarts and you want to see a different storyline, it's a great book. Not highly valuable, but still a really cool book, and I think also a great opportunity for a signature from Neil Gaiman.
Cherry Deluxe #1 from 1998, 25 years ago. Thank you, Prince of Cheese. Now, our underrated books of the week. Richard, you're going from Cherry Pop-Tart to a girl we all know and love, Penny Century.
Yeah, Penny Century #1 from 1997. This book, this book so reminds me of a certain period in my life when I was deep into the whole universe that Jaime Hernandez and Beto and who's the other brother?
Mario wasn't involved at this point. Mario was only around for 3 issues.
Right. They spun a whole universe. You know, there was there was the universe that Jaime made, and then there was the whole other universe, Palomar, that Gilbert did, and just really deep into that whole universe. And then Penny Century has always been a running character in Jaime's universe, kind of a um, superheroine separate from the rest of the, beautiful blonde, tall, majestic, and always seemed to be this flawless character, kind of a foil um, um, for poor Maggie. But this book focuses on her, and it's an interesting series in that the first story just shows how vulnerable she is. It's uh, her and this love life with this man from her hometown that she comes back and romances over a period of time, and you find out some vulnerabilities from her about through the course of the story, and I think it just gives a human aspect to it.
That's just no man. That's Ray Dominguez.
Yeah, yeah.
Come on. Ray ends up marrying Maggie. Spoiler alert. If you're not reading the new series, you should be. This was interesting because this book was a series. This was not a one shot. It ran for 7 issues, and it was okay. Love and Rockets Volume 1 is over. What are we going to do now? Well, we're going to expand and do other things and leave our stories behind for now. Both brothers. All right. Jaime's bored. I got to go back and revisit these characters. And he does it through this comic book sized series called Penny Century, which, it's Penny on the cover. Penny's ostensibly in the book, but it's about Maggie and Hopi and Ray and everybody else. And so this runs for a year and a half or so, 7 issues, irregular schedule. And then they just, they succumb to market pressures and they just bring Love and Rockets back, like nothing ever happened. As a series. So Penny Century is it's an important part of the Love and Rockets story. It's a bridge between Volume 1 and Volume 2. You have to read it to see how Penny and Hopi get back together, or not Penny and Hopi, Maggie and Hopi actually reunite in this series.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. They have such a tempestuous relationship through the first series. And they do kind of make amends through this series. So yeah, it's a great. I hate to keep harping on Love and Rockets. Sometimes I feel like it's Love and Rockets, Miles Morales, Cherry Poptart. It's just the same. But again, Doll Man. Yeah, a lot of this podcast is about us. I hate to say it. I hate to sound selfish, but it's about our journey through this hobby. And these are important books to me. And I like to share that with people. So, yeah, really, really, really great series. Read it if you have an opportunity, because it does lead into the second series.
Yeah, it's important, and that's why it's included in a lot of the reprints, because you can't just. It's not like, well, I was going to say it's not like Whoa Nelly, which was another. Whoa Nelly is another Love and Rockets spinoff that is important. You have to read it to catch everything that happens with Maggie. So everything is connected. Even mutants that you wouldn't expect, like Namor, the Submariner.
Okay. I didn't know which number 6 you had on the show notes.
It is X-Men number 6 from 1964. Yes, the X-Men number 6, the 6th issue of the X-Men. This was a crossover with Namor, the Submariner. When he still had red trunks. See the red trunks?
Yeah.
Before the green. It's revealed in this issue that both Professor X and Magneto think Namor is a mutant. So this is where the idea that Namor is not only an Atlantean, but that he is a mutant Atlantean because of the wings on his feet. And so they both try to recruit Namor to their cause. Magneto wins. Why? Because Namor's a horn dog.
Yeah, it really is. And it's not Sue Storm. Every cover about this era is him grabbing on the Sue Storm.
In this issue, he's infatuated with the Scarlet Witch. Now, okay, fair enough. It's in character. Why would Professor X not put Jean Grey front and center and say, but look,
it's a meat market. Yeah.
Well, she's a redhead. Come on. It's a fun issue. Basically it's a big fight scene with, at the end, spoiler alert, Namor goes, "You're both crazy," and he leaves and does his own thing. Still, X-Men not a success at all at this point. Still bi-monthly. It's going to be bi-monthly for another year. The first 2 years, it really struggled. And then after that, it continued to struggle. It was never an A-list title until
Why did they allow it to go into reprints? I mean, were there some contractual obligations?
No, here's the thing. It wasn't selling well enough to justify spending money to commission new stories. However, it sold well enough that, hey, let's just reprint old stories. It still sold well enough to make money. So they just continued it as a reprint title. And they also wanted to crowd the newsstands as much as they could to crowd everybody else off. So until they rebooted it with Giant Size X-Men #1. Have you heard of that book?
A little bit.
Yeah. It was a bit of a success. X-Men #6, though, early X-Men title, a 9.4 sold in August for $2,900. A more affordable grade of a 7.5, this is a 7.0, sold in June for $576. So Richard talks about it all the time. X-Men are gold at this point. Byrne and Claremont X-Men in particular. I think early X-Men, Silver Age X-Men, are still, issues 2 through 10 are still affordable, and you should be grabbing those if you want to finish your X-Men run now before any movie happens.
First appearances are in that first 10, first 20, if you want to go that high. And those characters are going to be important for forever, not just in the MCU, but in comics in general. So pick them up.
Not so much the Stranger or Lucifer, but the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And
yeah, there are a couple exceptions in there, but yeah, I think we'll see some of those characters in movies.
Another week, another show. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time.
Yeah, everybody, stay safe.